Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the third and final session in our BC Provincial Summit on Aging Keynote teaser series, the Frome Project, a community approach to addressing isolation that works. I'm Barbara McMillan, United Way BC's Population Health Provincial Community Engagement Coordinator, and I'm very pleased to be introducing and moderating this session. I'd like to begin by recognizing that I'm speaking today from the traditional territory of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh First Nations. And as this is a pan-Canadian webinar with participants from all over the country, we also acknowledge the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territories of all First Nations on which we gratefully work and gather. I also today want to acknowledge the many British Columbians and communities that have been affected by this week's floods, slides, and road washouts. Now more than ever, compassion, resilience, and community networks and connections will be critical to effectively responding to and recovering from the devastation experienced by so many. To manage this session and ensure good audio and visual quality, there are a few details we need to point out. Everyone will be muted and cameras will be off other than the presenters. Please introduce yourself and where you are joining from in the chat box. There's also a Q&A box where you can post your questions. And at the end of the presentations, we'll have about 15 minutes for Q&A and discussions. And please note who you are directing your question to. The webinar is being recorded and will be posted on Healthy Aging Core along with the slides in the next day or two. So watch for them. And we'll also send the link in our core newsletters. And also following the session, all participants will be sent a brief survey to provide feedback. So we encourage you to look for that and let us know what you think of this session and ideas for future webinars. And as those of you who have joined previous sessions know, the Summit Teaser Keynote series focuses on programs that were developed in other countries and have inspired and informed some of the current initiatives in BC, topics we think are of interest to those involved in healthy aging efforts anywhere in Canada. In the first of the series, we looked at social prescribing, and in the second, men's sheds, both effective approaches to reducing social isolation and improving health and wellness, and growing global movements now gaining ground in Canada. Today's session looks at these two strategies and others that have been implemented in a community in a holistic and integrated manner. Since the initiative began, this project to combat isolation in the area around Frome in Somerset in the United Kingdom has seen a dramatic fall in emergency hospital admissions. The program's success is based on making routine use of social relationships the most effective intervention for improving health and longevity. The impact of this holistic approach has resulted in the Frome model of enhanced primary care that is gaining worldwide attention and serving as a model for other communities. In this session, you'll hear how, through paying attention to people's community networks, Health Connections Mendip reconnects people to both their own supportive network and the extensive community that already exists. You'll also hear how local men's sheds are part of these networks and activities that are doing so much to reduce social isolation and improve health and well-being. So I'm pleased to introduce our presenters today. Julie Carey-Downes has a background in psychiatric nursing and is now Area Lead for Health Connections Mendip, where she has worked since 2015, as well as Area Lead for the Frome area and surrounding villages, where she manages a group of health connectors based in GP practices. Julie is involved in supporting community development in the different areas. She also coordinates and delivers the community connector training across Mendip to all different groups and individuals. Our second presenter, Patrick Abrahams, moved to Somerset after a lengthy career in business. And it was in Somerset where he launched the Frome Men's Shed in August of 2014. It now has over 100 members and meets weekly, with over 35 a week taking part. As the Frome Shed leader, Patrick addressed the Putting Men into Mental Health conference and has participated in the Somerset Mental Health Forum. Patrick eventually stood aside from the management of the Frome Shed, but continues to operate as a UK Men's Shed Association volunteer ambassador. He's answered over 5,000 calls from people wanting to set up sheds or join them on a variety of issues from health and safety, risk analysis, premises, insurance, etc., and now continues to support sheds across the southwest of England. He has produced and presented over 50 hours of community radio on men's sheds worldwide. I think it's called Shed Radio, and it's worth tuning in, including interviews with the Coquitlam Shed here in British Columbia, as well as specific programs on social prescribing. So thank you very much, Julie and Patrick, for joining us today. And now I'm going to turn it over to Julie to present.
Hi, I'm Julie Carey-Downes, as you just heard, and I work at Frome Medical Practice. And the way I was going to show you how we work is to do a patient's journey, basically. Right, so we've got Mary who goes to her GP, and while she's there, she explains to him that she's been feeling quite stressed and anxious, and she's worried about her weight at the moment as well. And another thing is she's got financial problems. The GP realizes these are things he cannot address, and she's not sure what to do. So he refers her to the Health Connections Mendip team, and he explains to her what we are and how we can support her. So we would allocate a health connector who could visit Mary either at home. And we paid members of the GP practices. We're not counsellors, therapists, and we're not medically trained. We would visit, she can see us in the GP practice. We would visit her at home or do phone consultations. And we would discuss with her what matters, what is important to her. We would sit down and discuss this and set goals, and ask her what type of changes she would like to make. Is there an immediate network would help her? And we do network mapping, network enhancement. And everything we do, the GP has access to. They can see her notes. So we could do on-track goal setting groups, group consultations, or she could attend a healthy lifestyles program that we run. We could also support her it's directed to a directory where we have lots of information where we could discuss with her healthy eating. And funnily enough, we use the Canadian healthy plate because that's the one out of all the ones we've come across that's not sponsored by big business. We could get her to do a healthy eating diary and keep a record of how moods and how she feels, and sit down with her and arrange all this. We could maybe support her to attend a support group that could look at similar problems that she's facing with sort of her stress and anxiety, and sit down and do group work with her. If she wants to, she may just want to do one-to-one work with somebody, but we do have access to signposting her to groups, and groups that we actually run as well for pain management, self-management and healthy lifestyles. We can also get her to, if she's interested in nature and outside, we could maybe look at linking her up with organisations and services where she could maybe join a gardening group. We have lots of seated gardening activities for people who need access for wheelchairs and so on. There's lots going on in our community that we work with. So we could link her up to something like this as well. Also, pain management. We actually run pain management courses ourselves. Our health connectors are trained to do this. And we've noticed that people who attend these have a reduction in painkillers, and the GPs refer people to our pain management courses. But we also do healthy lifestyle courses and on-track groups for people with long-term health conditions, where we look at things like nutrition, pacing, and alternatives to painkillers, to relaxation and so on. And this information is all on our website as well, under resources. We also would look at sleep, particularly we have lots of resources on our website where people can access information on a sleep diary, sleep hygiene. So as well as seeing people one-to-one and addressing these issues and doing groups, people can also find out a lot more about it on our website. If they don't have IT access, they can phone us, and or if we've seen them one-to-one, we would print this off, this information, and give it to them and as part of their programme. We also have community connectors, which people often go on to train as, and that connects them with their community. I'll say more about that later. We also have access. A lot of people that we visit have pets, and often when they are unable to get out, we are able to link them up with organisations and services that can look after their pets and walk their pets for them, as well as getting them to look at network mapping to see if there's family, friends and neighbours who would be able to do this for them as well while they're going through their unwell phase. The other thing we get people to do is to look at themselves and maybe looking after themselves, maybe take time to do sort of stomach breathing, mindfulness exercises on their own at home. And we particularly found these really useful during lockdown when people were isolated, and actually run online courses for people for this with anxiety. Also, people will often want to go to some form of exercise group, particularly where weight is concerned. And we have specific groups we run ourselves. One of our health connectors, Joe, runs a seated exercise class for people with specific health problems. But we also know of other organisations that do this. And we may signpost somebody along to one of those if they want to become more active and reach out to other people. And as well as this, we run a Couch to 5K from our medical practice, which is organised by a GP, a health connector, and one of our mental health nurses as well. So we have lots of activities for people to go to, no matter what their capabilities are. And the other thing on our website is that they will find information on education they can read under our resources. So we would sit down with the person one-to-one, set out their own individual plan with them, and also then find things that once we've finished seeing the individual, that they can link up with out in the community. And that's all found on our Health Connections website. The other thing now is we've got another patient who comes to see the GP who also is having the same situation as our previous patient, who's quite anxious and stressed, worried about her weight and also finances. But Kathy knows what she wants to do. She knows what type of help she needs, but she doesn't quite know where to go to get it. So in this situation, she may not need to see a health connector for one-to-one. The GP can actually, while she's with her, visiting the female or male GP, they can actually print off the information she might need. So they could print off for her by pressing the F12 button during the consultation. They pull up our directory and they may print off information for her on anxiety, relaxation and mindfulness. They would print off stuff about healthy eating and where to get the help for that. Or they would signpost her directly to our website and say that the person could look at it themselves and find out. They may not want to go on IT. They may want to phone us directly. So the GP would give them our phone number where they could ring an admin health connector who would discuss all of this with Kathy and print the information off for her and send it out in the post. Or she may want to go physically to talk to somebody, but not a health connector face-to-face. So she could come along to our access points, our talking cafes, where there's always a health connector, as well as other people from the community who know about our services. And she could sit down there and find out where she could get help for her situation. So she may be signposted to the Citizens Advice or Christians Against Poverty and so on, and exercise programs. Or she could come to our talking benches. During lockdown, we couldn't have our talking cafes. So we have talking benches once a week in all of the towns we cover at the same place, the same time every week, where there's a health connector where people can come and chat to us and find out where they can get support and help. So people don't always come to us from the GPs. They can self-refer, or our community connectors. Here we got Sally, and she's out in the town in Frome and starts talking to somebody and explains her situation. And Mike, who she's talking to, is a community connector. And she explains to him that she's having problems, you know, at home, her husband's unwell, she doesn't know where to get support. And he would then be able to direct her to our access points. He would give her a card with our phone number on it and our website. He would direct her to a talking cafe, a talking bench, or suggest that she ring us and could be seen one-to-one. We have community connectors right across the Mendips who've all trained to pass on this information. They're not formal volunteers, they're individuals who pass on the information of where to access support. We've got all our local police are trained, taxi drivers, hairdressers, students, doctors, cafe staff, men's shed. And we now have over 1,800 people across the Mendip who are trained as community connectors. And that would mean if they had 20 conversations a year, that would be 36,000 signposting conversations that we would have to direct people to the various support and help they need. In this situation, we can see all the different things that we do. So people can access us through their GP, and we would see them at home one-to-one. Or they can come along to our talking cafe groups, our support groups. People don't have to be referred to this. They can ring us up and find out about them. And then they can meet and make friends at our various support groups, our on-track groups and our pain management and self-management groups for people with long-term health conditions. Often people who come along to our groups, as they become more well, they often like then to help us out and often present the groups with us. We have people who've gone through our groups, our self-management groups and our on-track groups, who then come and help us facilitate them, and because they can then tell their story and show how it worked for them. And often we find that people who've been through this system themselves are able to give the information, and people seem to understand it better because they're able to explain it a lot better than we can sometimes and show how it has worked. And I said, as we do specific exercise classes for people with long-term health conditions, and we also signpost to other organisations who do this. And often people who go along to these groups and our exercise classes then go on to other exercise classes out in the community once they become more physically well to attend them. Here we can see these are all the different things that go on at our medical practice in Frome. We have our support groups that we run, our self-management courses, discussion groups, and we have a patient participation groups, as most general practices do, but we also have a youth patient participation group at the medical practice as well. We run exercise classes, as I've said, or we get other organisations to come in and do this. We run, we have our cafe downstairs in the medical practice, which unfortunately is closed at the moment due to COVID. And we have a community information area. So our medical practice is seen as a community hub where people can find out a lot more than just coming along to seeing a GP. So there's lots of things. And then we have become part of our community. So we have our community connectors, our talking cafes, and here we can see a mum's walk group that walk around the show field behind the medical practice. So we are mainly working with our community and our town council. It means that we are part of the community and not a separate entity in a silo on our own. And there we can see Kathy has become a community connector herself here and is talking to somebody and maybe signposting them to support they may need. So here we've got the GPs. GPs also are community connectors. They train up to pass on information, not just at work, but when they're out in the community. We have our directory. And there we see our health connectors, we see people one-to-one, our directory and resources, which is really useful for people to see all the support we offer. We have our phone line, which is manned Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, where anybody can ring up who lives in the Mendip area to find out what support is available to do with their health and well-being. And they can do self-referrals to see someone one-to-one or be sent out information. And we have our talking cafes, our community connectors, our talking benches. We have our digital community connectors who help people get online, and particularly useful during isolation time. We have our green community connectors, our hearing loss ones, and our healthy lifestyle. And also those difficult to have conversations. So we've trained up community connectors in all aspects to be able to go out and talk to friends, neighbours and colleagues about what is available in their community. And here we have our warm home community connectors who help people link up to get grants for heating, which is really useful. We've been able to get people grants to pay their heating bills during the winter. And this one here, the hearing loss, we've gone into nursing homes and I've got people to train up people to service their own hearing aids, and particularly in nursing homes. So Let's Connect is another, so basically Let's Connect is part of Health Connection. So we are social prescribing link workers, health connectors, our website, our phone line, our talking cafes, our benches, and people are our connectors. It's simple. It's the whole population takes part and is involved. It's replicable. I always get stuck at this word. It's replicable. Anybody can do this in any community. Anyone and everyone is involved. It's common sense. It's about signposting people to where they can get support. It belongs to everyone. Everyone feels part of it. And we often have people who are community connectors saying that they feel part of a solution and feel quite, it impacts on their mental health as well. It's not just the people who are signposted and are supported, but the people offering that support. It belongs, it makes them feel good as well. And it helps create a feeling of movement, and it doesn't cost much. And it shows that social prescribing type services based on what matters to individuals and communities can be exciting, innovative, place-based and belongs to everyone. And I think the important thing is that everyone feels part of it. And as a medical practice and people working here, we are not telling people what to do. We're asking them, what is it you want? What support is it? What's important to you? And this is the slides that Jenny and Helen Kingston, who started this, say you just need those sparks. Every community will have those sparks, those people who have these ideas they want to share and projects they want to set up. And once that spark there, it connects to everyone, and everyone suddenly starts getting involved, wanting to be involved within a community. And the big thing is to have trust. And this was a big thing with Helen Kingston and Jenny Hartnell, who basically, I remember my job description, part of it being, we trust you to do what's best for the patients. Go out there and find what they want. What's the ideas you will come back with? We trust you to be able to do this. And that was really important, I think, having that trust. And also it's a two-way thing, we trust Helen Kingston and Jenny Hartnell completely. They are so supportive. And it's that ripple effect. Once things start taking place and things start happening in a community, it ripples out and everybody else gets involved and wants to be involved. And we have such good relationships now with the local police, the job centres, even estate agents. When people move to Frome, they put information about health connections and social prescribing in packages for people when they move to the area. And as Jenny always says, that little bit of magic and it all works. Thank you.
Thank you, Julie. Super interesting, informative, and just really inspiring. We do have some questions that have come in, but we'll come back to them after Patrick presents. So we'll turn it over to Patrick now. And if other people have questions, go ahead and put them in the Q&A box. And also I have put the link into the chat box for Health Connections Mendip, where you can get a lot of the background information that Julie talked about. Hey, Patrick.
Yeah, thank you. I'll be there just a moment. I'm going to just share my screen. Bear with me. Okay, Bob, can you see that okay?
Not yet. It looks, here we go. We're good.
Good, okay, well, thank you. Hey, I'm Patrick. Thanks. Have I got my video running too? There you go, good. Yeah, hi, I'm Patrick. Thanks for the opportunity of taking part in your conference. I'm going to cover two aspects of community groups that you've just heard of from Julie. That's Talking Cafe and Men's Shed. When I say men's sheds, I'm going to call them men's sheds, but there are men's, women's and community sheds. And most men's sheds have some coverage and attendance by women. They're ringed at the top of the slide. Now, on the left-hand side of the slide, you can see Frome is in Somerset, in the southwest of the UK, which incidentally is nearer Halifax, Nova Scotia, than I think you guys are to Halifax. But there you go. We're in darkest Somerset. You can also see the book, The Compassion Project, which deals with the project we're covering now in some great detail. I have no financial interest in the book, by the way, but I do encourage you to have a look at it. Now, I'm going to cover two areas that we know reduces loneliness, that is connected to the Mendip and Health Connectors. But I'm going to talk about men's sheds, and if you've not come across them before, basically they're groups which give local people a space to work together on practical projects. It's equipped with tools often donated by people locally. They work on projects for themselves, other charitable groups and schools, and people in the community. There's about 600 in the UK today, nearly as many in Ireland. I guess Doug Mackey's on this call, but so I'm up to date with about 40 sheds in Canada, I think. There's about 1,000 in Australia and all other countries like Denmark, Sweden, Iceland, USA, and Kenya. Now then, the UK Men's Shed Association issued a survey pre-COVID, and the shed-shaped word cloud on the slide gives an idea of some of the activities that people reported in the shed. But the two statistics on the right-hand side of the slide are really critical. It says that 89% of shedders who attended regularly had a decrease in depression, and 79% had a reduction in anxiety. Now, from feedback from all kinds of people, I personally know that men's sheds and talking cafes reduce loneliness for attendees and makes people happier and healthier. And this isn't just for the people who go to those groups. But a couple of points. That men's sheds and talking cafes were established pre-COVID to reduce isolation. The lockdowns have hit the sheds badly. Now they're bouncing back, some of them, but some of them are still struggling to recover. And most of what I'm covering is about pre-COVID conditions. Now, my presentation today is going to be just a series of photographs with accounts from people who've taken part in the men's shed in Frome. These accounts are short audio clips of interviews with that they've done as part of the radio show called Shed Happens. Now, none of this could have happened without the fantastic work of the Frome Medical Centre in terms of their social signposting and referrals. Now, I prefer to use that language rather than social prescribing. As Julie indicated, it's about what people need rather than what they should be told what to do. Anyway, and I'd just like to point out a recent report from the British Medical Council in the Public Health Journal, talking about men's sheds as a healthcare route. They recommended policymakers and practitioners must find novel ways to coexist and work in partnership with men's, women's and community sheds to ensure a wide reach when planning health interventions for those with and without existing health conditions. And I think it's this innovative approach from the Frome Medical Centre, which is the real reason for the success that we've had in Frome. So let me start with talking cafes. You've heard about a talking cafe. This is what a talking cafe looks like. It's held in a public cafe, which is open to all. And it's really important to just chat, meet people. And there's always a health connector attending and a wide range of other agencies. It's a great place to meet new people. For men's sheds, it's brilliant because some people are scared to, visit a new group. Walking through that door is tough. And what often happens is they'll come to the shed, they come to the talking cafe, and they can chat with the shedder. And when they leave, we say, "Are you going to come to the shed on Thursday?" And they say, "Well, I don't know, I might do. Are you going to be there?" And you can say, "Yes, I'll be there," and they'll know they've got a happy face, a friendly face that can welcome them, which is important. So, here's another picture. Here's a picture of Julie, actually, in the talking cafe, sat next to one of our shedders, who's chatting to someone who actually isn't a shedder. And the great support if you're looking for help or advice on all kinds of things: housing, health, finance, social care, children's services, you name it, anything. I love going to the talking cafe because you never know who you're going to meet there. It could be somebody wanting help, someone from another organisation you can learn from. It's a great place to network. Fantastic. So I absolutely critical as part of the overall shed success and the Frome project success. Now, look, I'm going to move to men's sheds now. What I want to just say is that there are all kinds of different referrals that the shed receives from the health connectors and the medical centre and the community connectors. It could be shedders that are referred to it. It could be visitors. It could be health programs, or events and conferences. And all these things are really, really important. And you can see in the photograph, that's a fairly typical situation in a shed. One person working and 4 people giving advice or watching. Anyway, here's an example of someone who came to us from the medical centre. They've been signed off work. Picture here is Matt. He's repairing a table that his grandfather taught him to play cards on when Matt was under 10, I think. Now, the table in the corner, you can just see a little music box that one of the other shedders helped to fix. And I was there when he switched that music box on for the first time in 35 years. It was emotional. Now, look, here's an audio recording from Matt on what he had to say about coming to the shed.
And I came on Thursday and met the most amazing guys that I think I've ever met, to be honest. And just had a chat. No one was there to judge. There were a few people there with the same sort of issues as myself. And I came here for 2 to 3, 4 months, I think, until I had confidence in myself that I could go back to work.
So he came to the shed with absolutely no practical DIY skills, and he eventually repaired many items, including the spinning wheel, which he repaired. We didn't tell him how much it was worth until after he finished. But he went on to convert his garage into a playroom for his kids, and made a lot of good friends. He's now back at work. You'll hear that in a minute. He still drops in from time to time, and we miss our Matt. This is what he had to say.
If it wasn't for the shed, I honestly don't know where I would be right now, because the confidence that these guys here gave me, guidance, and just chatting, not judging, just chatting, and realising that it was actually my work that did it, that made me depressed, and it wasn't myself. Where all along I thought it was me, and I'd failed, and it it was my fault, but really it's just turned me completely around. I'm back to work, and all things are good.
One of the things that was good for all the other shedders was Matt used to talk about his depression, you know, and so he'd say things like, hey guys, you know, just because I'm laughing, it doesn't mean I'm not still suffering from depression. And he used to have a lot of conversations with people about his condition. Now here's another shedder. This is Steve. he made a computer-controlled cutting machine from scratch using, you know, wood and metal and all kinds of things. He had scant academic success, I think would be fair. But shedders refer to Steve as being a natural genius when it comes to a project like this. Now you can see on the right-hand side is a picture of a wooden carving made by this machine he built, the Frome icon, St. Aldhelm. So here's his experience in the shed.
5 years ago, I had a stroke. After I came out of the hospital, I sat and felt sorry for myself for a while. And it was 3 or 4 months, and then my wife had had enough of it, and we split up.
How did you feel then?
Totally alone. If I hadn't discovered this, I would have probably carried on living the same existence that I was. But coming here has totally changed my life. It's given me back my self-confidence. It's given me a load of new friends. I now get involved in voluntary projects and help out the local community and stuff. Something I would never have dreamed of doing before. And it's only because I came here and I met these people.
So that's Steve. Now they're the kind of traditional, or what people would have referred to as people who've been, you know, referred to the shed as individuals, but they're not the only kind of referrals. So we get visitors referred to us as well. And the gentleman in the middle here is from Swedish television, Bengt Norberg. He was referred to us from the medical centre, and they actually filmed at the medical centre as well. And you can see the film that's being shown in the background is actually the Frome shed. Now they visited the shed and produced a programme on Swedish TV that you can see in the picture. Now he made these comments, having spent the morning with us in the shed.
It's an amazing place, and you can see the energy, you can feel the energy and the enthusiasm, and also you're just talking to a couple of the guys here, you understand how much it means to them in their personal lives. Some may have not needed it as much as others, but from what I've learned, maybe it has been a life savior for some, and that tells it all, I think.
Now, the interesting thing about this is that you see the guy in the black t-shirt on the right-hand side. He's being interviewed by Bengt on Swedish TV. Now, we introduced Sean Furlong from the Malmo shed because we'd had links with the Malmo shed, and we told Bengt about the Malmo shed, and so he took part in the TV program. But a typical case of worldwide networking that takes place in the men's shed movement. And I know Barb talked earlier about linking up with some people from Ottawa just recently. And all of this because the Frome Medical Centre suggested to SVT to come and film in the shed. Now here's another referral from the medical centre. The gentleman in the middle of the picture with the green bandana, he is Kakaru Iwasi. He was a trainee GP who was spending some time in the Frome Medical Centre. The comments he made following the visit can be seen on the right. He was actually talking to two gentlemen who were doing Tai Chi massage to try and fix this guy's knee, and they made some improvement. We've been in touch with him during the pandemic. He's back in Japan now, and he's been very busy in Tokyo treating COVID patients. He was just saying, you know, all of them look so happy that they enjoy their own time in their small space. I was very surprised to hear some of the men over 80, all of them look younger than they are. And here is another visitor. This is the Duchess of Cornwall, who visited us straight after the Frome Medical Centre, and she spoke to all 24 shedders on that day. And we gave her a miniature replica coracle, which you can see in the background. It's a small Welsh sailing boat from historical times. And when she arrived, she said it was great not to be surrounded by suits on such a visit. But the point is about these kind of referred visitors is that it gives shedders a chance to talk about what they do, who they are. It recognises them and compliments them for their work. And have people interested in who they are and what they do has a major impact on their self-esteem and self-worth. And you can see Steve in the left-hand side of that picture. Okay, we also get visits from health professionals who accompany people to the shed. In this case, you have Sharon in the t-shirt there in white. She is a support time and recovery worker working for a local Somerset mental health partnership. And if somebody needs carers or needs help to function, then they come along. And that's an important part of the process as well. And the medical centre invites us to meetings from time to time. This is one which was a health delegation from Singapore. And you can see Jenny with the green bandana and Dr. Kingston in the blue. And on the far left, there's a shedder who was visiting me from the northeast of England. And as a result of that visit and seeing what was happening in Frome, he's back up in the northeast working on a similar project with the medical centres there. Another example of networking. We also get visits like this from the abdominal aortic aneurysm screening people who visited the shed and encouraged people to get the AAA screening. And this is a long story. You can see Julie on the right-hand side picture there. This is a shedder we made a coffin for with the permission from his funeral director, where we don't compete with local businesses. As a result of that, the coffin being made, we had several people take part with the end of life planning document from Julie, and of course a great deal of consternation really. In the left-hand picture, you can see the gentleman, Jeff, whose coffin it is, and actually it has now been used, and we were invited to his funeral by his son. We also go to conferences. You heard about the Green Connections. The Frome Medical Centre did a Green Impact for Health conference at the Frome Medical Practice, which was really well received. And the Frome Shed were at the New Ways of Working with Men in Mental Health, both of which are really important for networking and all kinds of other things. And finally, events. This is actually the Frome Medical Centre on the left here. They had an open day, and there's 3 shedders there by the Frome Shed stand, and they were right next door to the Parkinson's team and the macular degeneration team. And so they spent a long time talking to each other about Parkinson's symptoms, etc., 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 as well as answering questions for people who are visiting. And on the right is a private practice event, which the shed attended, with all kinds of other linkages and networking. All of these things are very important, not just directing individuals to attend the organizations, but the networking and the linking up is really important. And as a direct result of the medical centre, really, the local community radio station, Frome FM, asked us to take part in their health and wellbeing hour that takes place every Thursday. Now we've had, I don't know, something like 4 years we've run the Shed Happens show. We've had 200 people take part. And the support of the Frome Medical Centre is very important. It's critical to all of this. But I do want to mention 3 other organisations in Frome. Excuse me, Frome Town Council, one of the most innovative and independent town councils in the country. Frome FM, the community radio station, and the local free paper, the Frome Times, all very special organisations that help make Frome the very special place it is and help it work together. So our Shed Happens radio show has covered a whole range of aspects with usually some kind of health theme. And if you look down that list, you'll see the health themes that are detailed. As Barbara said, we did something like 50 hours. We've done 50 hours of radio shows. They also broadcast on other radio stations in the Southwest. We also ran some special worldwide specials during the COVID lockdown. And that picture on the right-hand side is, I think, Mike Jennings from the Co-Quitlam Shed that took part in one of our shows, along with Doug Mackey from the Canadian Men's Shed Association. We also have programs with shed from Iceland, Germany, New Zealand, Denmark, USA, Canada, and Australia, and all aim to help shedders stay connected during the lockdown. And you can see Steve in that picture. That's one of the community groups he volunteers for, operating the Frome FM desk, the audio desk. Okay, so to close, going back to that British Medical Council Public Health Journal, policymakers and practitioners must find novel ways to coexist and work in partnership with men's, women's and community sheds. And I believe that, you know, as summarised in Julie's Let's Connect slide, I'm convinced the approach taken by the Frome Medical Centre is just that innovative way of signposting to men's sheds and other similar community groups that have generated these the pre-COVID results. Now, just to close, I'm going to go back to another quote in a minute, but the quote from the Guardian newspaper: Frome in Somerset has seen a dramatic fall in emergency hospital admissions since it began a collective project to combat isolation. There are lessons for the rest of the country. It could be, if the results stand up, be one of the most dramatic medical breakthroughs of recent decades. It could transform the treatment regime, save lives, and save health services a fortune. I'd like to just close and replay that account from Bengt Norberg.
It's an amazing place, and you can see the energy, you can feel the energy and the enthusiasm, and also you're just talking to a couple of the guys here, you understand how much it means to them in their personal lives. Some may have not needed it as much as others, but from what I've learned, maybe it has been a life savior for some, and that tells it all, I think.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Patrick. That was super informative. I first heard Patrick last year, about a year ago now, when he was presenting to a BC Men's Shed Association Zoom meeting. And in that presentation, he talked about the book, The Compassion Project. So I immediately ordered it and read it, and started at that time thinking about the potential to have a session like this and share the Frome experience with a broader audience. So I'm absolutely thrilled that that's been able to happen today. We've got quite a few questions. I'm going to start with Joanna. So I won't necessarily take them in order, but some of them are kind of interrelated. Joanna is wondering how the Frome project got started. She notes that you often need a strong champion who gets things started at the beginning. So wonders if that was your experience.
We were very lucky. Helen Kingston and Jenny Hartnell got together because Helen Kingston realised that lots of people coming to see her at the practice didn't always need clinical or medical intervention. And she knew about certain projects and support available, but not all of it. So her and Jenny got together because Jenny was working on another project. And Jenny discussed with her that wouldn't it be great if they collected all the information and mapped out all the support that was out there. So that's how it began, with Helen Kingston and Jenny realising that they needed to map out everything that was out there for people, collect the information, and also find out where the gaps were. And that's how it started.
Great. And a related question from Sarah Lee is how the initiative is funded. And she's wondering about the funding also for Healthy Connectors.
Health Connectors are funded by the Clinical Commissioning Group and the NHS, and also some of the practices put money to them as well. My role initially, and which is great having Frome Town Council, my Health Connector side was funded by the Clinical Commissioning Group, but my community development initially was funded by Frome Town Council, but now it's all through the Clinical Commissioning Group. So that's how we get our funding. And Health Connectors are paid, and the Community Connectors are empowered people out in the community spreading the word.
Great, thank you. And I'm going to combine the other part of Joanna's question with Sonia's questions, which are, how are the health connections set up? Did the community organizations come together organically, or was it set up centrally from the project to form a directory? And Joanna's question also, do your volunteers burn out, or do you have enough people involved to continue?
Right, go to the first one. How did the health connectors spread? It was initially started at Frome Medical Practice, where Helen Kingston and Jenny did the directory, mapped out what was missing, and suddenly realised that there are certain patients you can signpost, but their lives are so complex they needed one-to-one involvement from health connectors. So that's where they employed health connectors to see people one-to-one, and also contacted all the other GP practices, federations across the Mendip, to ask them if they wanted to be involved, and they did. So we're not just Frome, we're Shepton Mallet, Wells, Glastonbury Street, and all the surrounding villages we cover. So we're in all the GP practices in those areas, and they all agreed to take part in it as well. And that's how it came about. And what was the other part?
About whether volunteers burn out, or do you have enough people around to continue?
We have enough people around to continue, but because it's not a formal volunteering role, they can do as much as they want. So individuals may signpost just 20 conversations a year. Others may be much more active in it. Some people do it as part of their job, like the police. They regularly use our services, but there's enough people around. And also, we find that organically in all the areas, certain people become the spokesperson for groups of community connectors. So not all of them contact me. It'll be one person on behalf of a group of 10 or 12. So it just seems to form naturally like that. And we do have a lot of people out there. They can dip in and out of when they want to do it.
Great, thanks. I think that mostly answers Sue's question about connectors, but she also wondered, from the Men's Shed perspective as well, whether they're volunteer or paid individuals.
That varies across the country. The Frome Shed is all unpaid volunteers. And I'd say that's the majority position. And in terms of the financing for that, the Frome Shed is self-sustaining from a financial basis, based on donations that are given for the work that's happened and the membership fees. Excuse me. And that's typically the case with most of the sheds in the UK. There are a few sheds that operate with paid employees, but that's very small number. In terms of the launch costs, the launch is very minor in terms of costs. People are very generous in terms of support. You need to get the insurance, and we got that from the local housing association, who actually approached us and said, "We hear you launching a men's shed. Can we help in any way?" And so both of those things. Now the other question on burnout is a problem from time to time, but and it does happen, and we do give. There's a few sheds that I give support to on that basis, and I've suffered similar kind of things in the past. It's hard work. There's a well-known shed leader in the south of England who always starts his talks with this particular story. He said, I visited my psychiatrist just recently, and he said that he thought I was suffering from anxiety, which he declared was much better than the depression that I was suffering from 3 months earlier. So it is the case that sometimes some volunteers burn out, but there are huge numbers of people taking part in the shed environment countrywide, and there's always enough people to pick it up.
Great, thanks, Patrick. Jane's got a couple questions that I think both of you could respond to. One of her questions is that she's curious about how comfortable queer or trans people will be in either of these settings. And secondly, are there queer or trans volunteers working as community link workers?
Community connectors, yes. I have community connectors from all sort of different backgrounds across the Mendips. I've got a few over in Glastonbury who belong to a group over there that so yes, we do. And I also have groups in the Gypsy travelling community, in the off-grid community, because they reach people who would maybe never approach me or talk to me. So, and I've also had people who've been on the benches in Glastonbury, homeless people, and have gone on to volunteer and do different things as well. So yes, we have people from all different backgrounds doing it. Yeah.
Patrick, what about in men's sheds?
Well, one of the things that we pride ourselves on is everyone is a shedder in a shed, and that's the primary name for people. It doesn't matter what your background is. It doesn't matter what your gender is. Now we're open to everybody, subject to them being able to operate safely in the environment. And there's all kinds of people. I mean, I showed a late 80s couple around the shed just before COVID. And I said, hey, this is the men's shed. And we talked about the men's shed and the women's shed. And this little old lady turned to me and she said, Patrick, when are you going to launch a transgender shed? She said. And I said, we have no plans to do that. People can attend as they wish.
Great, thanks. Lynn's got a question. What successes do community sheds have compared to gender-based sheds? And do they evolve out of talking cafes? Well, yeah, it's quite, in Frome we actually have 4 sheds. We have as part of one organisation, men's and women's sheds, and they do operate differently, and I'll run through that very briefly. We also have a younger person's shed that meets in the evenings and typically has more employed people in it, and we have a tech shed which is like a makerspace really. Women's sheds tend to develop either independently or as a result of the men's shed. They often have a different emphasis because the women's shed tends to have activity-based events, whereas the men's shed typically have they don't require the level. You know, often the women's sheds will say, we need to know how to wire a plug, we need to know how to put a shelf up, and so they'll often run courses like that. And so it's a different kind of environment, but they're all mixed. I don't know whether that answers the question. Really, did it? What was the question again, Bob? What successes do community sheds have compared to gender-based sheds, and do they evolve out of talking cafes? Yeah,
I mean, the talking cafe is quite. I remember the first time there was more men than women in the talking cafe, which was interesting. So, I mean, all of these things just evolve. I think Julie talked about these things evolving and developing, and people talking to each other. I mean, we're talking to 3 or 4 sheds in the area right now, including a women's shed, to help them launch. So a lot of it is about networking.
Okay. Joanna also wonders, how do the sheds find the space for their workshops? Are they paid or donated?
Both. Some sheds operate on free space or £1 a year. We pay a fairly commercial rent on ours. There's a lot of places. The church is very generous in terms of letting people have space where we build either build sheds or have sheds dropped in from porta cabins and stuff like this. It varies a lot, and space is tough to get hold of. But the best thing to do is just keep talking about it. I mean, there's a shed in Oswestry, and the 2 shedders were in the cafe talking about how they could possibly launch a shed, and someone overheard them and said, look, my company is just about to get rid of 2 portable offices, would you like us to ship it over to you? And so instantly they came up with a shed. So talk about it and network, and it'll come up. Schools are very important, colleges and churches.
Great. We're going to try to squeeze in the last question. How did you find these volunteers? I think for both of you.
When I first started doing the community connector training with the volunteers, it basically was footwork, going out there in the community, putting posters up, explaining what Community Connectors was and where we would be doing the training. Advertising it in newspapers. I go on Andy Miller's, we were talking about the GP who does the radio show. I went on to the radio show and talked about it. And then approaching things like the men's shed, the talking cafes, mention it in it there. And I think now it's got to the phase 5 years, 6 years down the line where people actually come to us now and ask us if we will go into workplaces. The police, whenever they get new recruits, they ask me to go in and do the training. The job centres contact me, churches, temples. I've been over into the Shaken Ashram in Glastonbury, to the Hare Krishna groups and done it there. People actually approach us now, but in the beginning, it was going out there, doing the footwork, just talking to people and explaining what it was.
I'd say the same thing. Yeah, radio, local papers, supermarkets, notice boards, talk to people, talking cafes. You know, just go, and you never know who you're going to meet. And now, I mean, the demand now, I think, is greater than it was 3 years ago, to be honest with you.
Great. Well, we are out of time, but I really want to extend a huge thank you to both of our presenters. We are so grateful for your time with us today, and we also really appreciate the important work you're doing in your community and your willingness to share your knowledge far and wide. It's truly exciting to see how models we've been learning about and piloting here in Canada look and hear and feel about their impact when applied in a community in an intentional and integrated and holistic manner. So as mentioned before, the recording of the session will be available on Healthy Aging Core in the next day or two, where you'll also find the other two sessions that were in this series. I also want to thank Aman for his expert Zoom management and work behind the scenes in making the Keynote series possible. I did post links to more information on the Frome model and men's sheds activity in Frome in the UK in the chat box. And we will also share on CORE, both CORE Canada and CORE BC. And lastly, thanks to everyone who attended these virtual keynote teasers that offer a glimpse into the exciting program we've got lined up for the 3rd Biennial British Columbia Provincial Summit on Aging, which is taking place in April. Next slide, please. And watch the CORE e-news for the program details and how to register if you haven't signed up already. We really hope to see you there. And meanwhile, thanks for all you do in your communities, and stay safe, everyone. Thank you so much.